depend on each other here.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
It's the moment Jeffrey Epstein is asked about his friendship with Donald Trump, and it's going viral today.
Have you socialized with him?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
The year was 2010, and the financier was battling an onslaught of lawsuits from multiple women, accusing him of sexually abusing them as minors. Epstein and Trump were known to be good friends, and in the deposition, he was asked directly.
Have you ever socialized with Donald Trump in the presence of females under the age of 18?
Epstein pauses, shakes his head, then answers.
Though I'd like to answer that question, at least today, I'm going to have to assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights, sir.
One thing Ghislaine Maxwell may be asked about is the birthday book, a book of raunchy letters from Epstein's friends she reportedly put together for his 50th birthday. According to the Wall Street Journal, President Trump wrote a letter with a doodle of a naked woman. He's calling the report a scam and is suing the newspaper.
All right, there's that learning curve that we were talking about.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. But that's not until after the podcast.
So welcome to another episode. This will be the first episode on the antisocial network of Political Cadence. Mm-hmm. This is our opportunity to vent and let all of our frustrations and fears out in one shot so that we don't have to burden our guests on our normal podcast. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah,
There's so much pressure. It's like a boiling pot. Shit boils up to the surface and the lid's about to blow. Sometimes
we usually go every 2 weeks, and we took a fortnight off. So now we got a whole month worth of unvented steam.
nonsense.
There's been more shit put into that melting pot every day of that month. It's been unbelievable. But we're glad to have Mike Hilbig with us this time.
Hi, Mike.
Hello. Hey. And Mike is going to bring some on-hands perspective as someone who is more politically active than most people we know, I guess. And
Will is on assignment and parts unknown.
Right. So just to give you an idea, Mike, what we do is we kind of go over the topics of the fortnight. It's been a month now. And then at the end, we do what we call the fuck-ups of the fortnight. And that's a list of things that have happened that we deem to be, boneheaded plays by the right.
We pick the biggest.
Boneheaded plays
biggest
that we
one.
disagree with. Thus far, they have mostly been perpetrated by the right. But should one come up from the left, we will attempt to bring it to your attention.
What were you saying?
And I want to. Sorry.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
I'd like to apologize. I cut my own bangs.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. Looks good.
Okay. It does not. Mm-hmm.
So, Mike, people know you from but you're a musician. You're a former college professor. That's right. You're not doing it now, right? You're not.
No, I'm not. I'm no longer teaching. I'm just. I do a lot of freelance writing, freelance editing. I do some AI training, which I don't love doing, but it pays bills. Helps you learn the technology and what its limitations are as well. But I do a lot of political organizing at this point, which is almost like having a second job. I do a lot of organizing protests, education working groups, direct actions, other sorts of political activity, trying to, organize working class people to be able to sort of resist and fight back, and hopefully one day have some power so that we can make these decisions for ourselves. So, I guess that's the long and short of that. Yeah.
So Lisa and I, since the outset of the year, we've been participating in some some protesting, and it's been pretty peaceful up to now.
Yeah, ours have been very, calm. The police are sitting by the side, and people are like, "Hi," and they're waving back.
almost found it cathartic, I would say, because especially as the spring went on, the sizes of the crowds got larger, and it was all very friendly, and you could have conversations with people about what was specifically bothering them. But
versus you.
And it was largely organized by the group 5051.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe one of them was the day of action was one of the themes of one of the days. But we haven't done one in quite a while. But there was one that was organized on the date of the protests at the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Alabama, where Senator John Lewis was famously arrested and roughed up for crossing the bridge in a civil rights protest. And
good trouble.
What's that?
Good trouble.
Good trouble, right. And so they did organize a day of protest that day, and it was somewhat muted, but people did congregate in Cincinnati down at the Roebling Bridge, and they were going to ostensibly reenact the crossing of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I made a video for it, so let me go ahead and play the video of the news item about this situation.
I'm going to keep muting.
Brought this as breaking news last night at 11 when the protest for ICE detainee Eamon Solomon turned to chaos.
Mike, 15 people arrested. Some of them face felonies. Today, Covington police held a news conference sharing new video of some of the moments, those tense moments between police and protesters, which led to an investigation into one officer who's now placed on administrative duty. After an hour of speeches calling for Eamon Solomon's release from ICE custody, protesters started marching on the Roebling Bridge. Some blocked traffic, coming in contact with this black SUV driving slowly into the crowd. Covington police say they talked with the driver. We asked if the man driving had an obligation to stop.
Not really.
Most of the crowd moved to the sidewalks. Some didn't budge. Covington's police chief says his officers did enough to de-escalate.
It's hard to say exactly whether there was ample amount of time. I don't know exactly what ample amount to me and you might be two different things.
The 15 people arrested appeared in court this morning. 2 local journalists covering the protests were also arrested and charged.
So they were protesting the detainment of a former chaplain at Children's Hospital named Eamon Solomon. And what he had done is he's not a naturalized citizen, but he has an arrangement where he would go and report periodically to immigration, and he was dutifully doing that, and he was maintaining these jobs where he was in spiritual support of people, and they decided to detain him recently for some reason. And of course, they've outfitted one of our suburban jails,
as an ICE detention center.
Yeah, under the direction of Sheriff Richard K. Jones, who's kind of a throwback to Gunsmoke or some shit. He's real.
Yeah. And if I can say 2 things here, this is kind of an example of one of the most violent episodes of protest in Cincinnati since the 70s. So just so you know, that actually showed the violence.
Weren't there the people shot at White Castle, and there were like uprisings after that?
Oh, after that?
I'm not aware of that.
No, I'm not aware of that.
This would have been about 15 years ago, 20 maybe.
Oh, okay.
White Castle on Reading Road.
But was that protest or?
No, I'm talking the aughts.
Okay. Yeah. Was that protesting or
after the cops killed those guys? Yeah.
I'm To be honest, I'm thinking about political protest as opposed to, social protest about,
Yeah, I think
it's a line, but I chose that line in this situation. Um, but yeah, we have had much more intense protests pertaining to the loss of life as opposed to political movements.
I think what we're seeing though is that the
Police
opposition.
violence.
It's getting there. It's ramping up. I do believe that. Yes. But here's a situation here that I wanted to point out. People crossed from Cincinnati into Kentucky. Kentucky arrested these people and sent them from Hamilton County into what county is that in Kentucky?
Kenton.
Do you know?
Kenton, yeah.
Kenton County. So they were in Hamilton County. They were arrested by Kenton County.
Once you're on the bridge, you're in Kentucky.
Right. So they were arrested by Kentucky police and they were sent to Butler County Jail. So there's 3 different jurisdictions here. So
about
it's
20 miles away.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, we should also add there were 2 journalists of the Cincinnati Herald that were there ostensibly to report on the event. They were also detained. They're facing up to 5 years in prison. But they're getting them for inciting a riot or something.
The reporters?
Yeah, they're trying to. Yes,
I think I think that one of the things that I think about protest in general, not that there's a lot of talk about what's a violent protest and what's a non-violent protest, and I think that obviously when we throw a protest, we want people to be safe and we want people to be able to a demand of the government in a way that allows them to hear it, but oftentimes things that are called violence at protests are things like property damage, things like that I wouldn't necessarily advocate for, but it's the things that people are protesting are so much more violent, right? So if we hold a protest for Trump bombs Iran without any sort of warning or approval, and because they are advocating on behalf of a people who are being ethnically cleansed, right? When that happens and we show up to protest, and then if somebody gets disorderly, people want to talk about violent protest, right? And I think that the scale of those 2 things is way different. So I think sometimes the way the media covers these events is always to portray the protesters as the disorderly ones and the police as the people there to maintain order, when oftentimes it's the opposite. The police are escalating conflict. We had a protest in
I'd go as far as to say most times.
Yeah, I would say most times too. We had a protest at the state capitol last year in Texas for Nakba Day, which is the anniversary of the Nakba. Which, if for people that are unfamiliar, it's the 1948. It means the catastrophe, and it's when the Palestinians were forcibly removed from their land during the creation of the state of Israel. Many of them were imprisoned unfairly in similar ways. And a lot of people died and lost their businesses, lost their homes. So we were doing an event to commemorate that during this ongoing genocide in Palestine, and so Greg Abbott pulled our protest permit 2 days before the protest, and they'd had this permit organized.
Texas governor, right?
Yeah, the Texas governor. He's one of the really nasty ones. But yeah, he pulled the permit a few days before the protest, even though they had that permit for months, citing safety concerns or some kind of, BS concern. It was a protest that was mostly Arab and Islamic families who were there to protest their own family members overseas having bombs dropped on them. And it was a statewide coordination between chapters of varying organizations across Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Waco, and so they canceled our permit, but we just showed up anyways because the community was like, no, we need to protest this, and we were met by riot cops. And fortunately, there were a few arrests of people that really weren't doing anything, and we had some, it was during the summertime, so we had some, people that had some like heat exhaustion issues, but otherwise, it, thankfully nobody was severely hurt during that action, even though it was pretty tense. But it was a situation where, like, a bunch of families, people with their dogs and their 4-year-olds show up to the state capitol to express their voice, and are met by a bunch of guys carrying shields and sticks and sound cannons and all these different things that they have, and it's just it's like that's the framing, right? And then the news wants to cover it as whether the protesters are being peaceful or nonviolent. Nobody ever asks, really, are the police doing that? So yeah. So
yeah.
Well, I mean,
Well, and then I want to say a lot of the stuff that happened, and I have absolutely no problem with Judaism. I have no problem with the Jewish people. The state of Israel, on the other hand, I can separate the two.
oh yeah, we're going to get into that.
Netanyahu in particular.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a minute. But it's like this big, beautiful bill. They bolstered the ICE, the agency, to where it's larger or more well funded than most armies in the world now. So they're going to have the disposable income to suppress any kind of, whether there's
Anything
violence or threat at all. They're going to have the wherewithal.
Put on shows of force, at least.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to arm these men in order to let them, just as a bluff. That money is there to, they put it into the, and you can see where the protests are even starting to get, like, this protest in particular was actually less advertised. It was more sparsely attended.
Yeah, I didn't even know about that. You mean the Roebling Bridge?
The Roebling Bridge.
Yeah, I didn't hear about it until after.
Do people call it the Roebling Bridge nowadays? We always called it the Suspension Bridge when I lived there.
Yeah, they call it the Roebling.
Well, like on the news, yeah. So I mean, if you look up,
I mean, I knew that was the name of the bridge, but I never knew anybody to call it that.
They call it that on the news all the time now. I mean, if you're a Cincinnatian, or a greater Cincinnatian, but like if you look up this story on the news, you've got to look up the Roebling Bridge, Roebling.
But we're talking about the big, beautiful bill, like Epstein. The Epstein scandal is like dominating the headlines right now, right? Everybody.
Actually, when we last left off on Political Cadence was June 28th. The G7 was going on or winding down. Elon Musk had just dropped his little bombshell saying Trump's in the Epstein files. And the big, beautiful bill had just passed.
That's a good demark, Aaron. Thanks for the update. It's like, it's been so long. So much
I've been scrolling back and figuring out where we left off.
And I think I organize with the Socialist Party, and like what we, Party for Socialism and Liberation, what we point out about these things is like, ICE only has, and this is only in polls that are like asking very generalized questions about ICE. ICE only has like a 42% approval rating. Most people do not want this, right? Like a lot of the things in this bill.
I'm surprised it's that high.
Yeah,
I think it's dropping.
Yeah, a lot of things in this bill are very unpopular. Trump didn't even get a majority of the people in the country to vote for him, right? It was like just under half the population and like of voting age only people, right? So like the real reason he won was just like low, like America has low voter turnout, right? Like it's not like
an electoral college.
Yeah, an electoral college and a whole lot of other mechanisms. So it's like it's important to understand that like we like to use a lot
he
of.
He did win the popular vote this time, didn't he? Or did he?
Yeah, he won the popular vote, but he didn't win the majority of
his third try.
Yeah, the popular vote didn't even equal a majority of Americans, right? Because that's how low our voter turnout is. And I think like
which was sad.
Is a really, I think this is why they're going so fast, right? It's what we're experiencing is a very loud minority who has grasped power through a lot of different tactics that many of which have been very undemocratic. In Texas where I live, they just redrew the districts, the voting districts, and they're like, we have a district that stretches from like North Texas to Southeast Texas,
Yeah.
in a thin line, as if those people live in the same region.
Well,
Now,
that's
now
funny.
Gavin Newsom's
we
now
wanted to
Gavin
discuss
Newsom's going to
gerrymandering.
threaten to Gavin
Yeah.
Newsom's threatening to redraw the districts in California now in retaliation.
Well, that's interesting. Let me. I got another video here. Let's play this. It's about exactly what you're talking about, Mike. This is James Tellerico, who is he aspires to be he's Representative James Tellerico of Texas, where he's talking about this gerrymandering.
So let me ask you, there's so much happening in Texas right now. I think that's representative of a lot of things happening around the country. You've been in the legislature since 2018. It's now day 2 of a special session where Greg Abbott wants the legislature to gerrymander its congressional maps too. That's something others in Washington have been pushing for. But I mean, I'm of the view, which I think you agree on, that if you're trying to suppress people's votes, you're worried not enough people want to vote for you. That's sort of the thing. But they're trying it nonetheless. So I guess the question I have for you is, I mean, Democrats are in the minority. What can be done to fight back on this? And is there anything that can be done to prevent it from moving forward?
Well, let's just be clear about what's happening. Donald Trump is attempting to rig the next election. He and his allies in Congress just passed the largest transfer of wealth in American history with their big, beautiful bill. They're literally kicking millions of people off their health care to fund tax cuts for billionaires. And they know it's unpopular, but they don't care because they have a plan. Donald Trump just called Governor Abbott and told him to redraw the political maps in Texas to gain 5 more Republican seats so they can protect their majority no matter what the election outcomes are. I mean, this is the rot at the core of our broken political system. Politicians choosing their voters instead of voters picking their politicians. In any other industry, this would be called a conflict of interest. And so Democrats here in Texas are going to do everything we can to stop this power grab, because if it happens here in Texas, they're going to do it in every red state across the country. They're going to rig the 2026 midterms.
So that's the type of shit that, we got our eyes on Epstein. We got all this stuff. But if he survives, and there's no indication to me that he won't survive this, just like he survived January 6th, the way he survived 34 felony convictions, the way he survived grab her by the pussy and all this
his base is turning on him on this. His base
they are, but
turned him on the other stuff.
They're already starting to soften though their position.
Yeah. I think like going back to the because I think like I do. I mean, I think the gerrymandering is clearly anti-democratic, and I think it's true, right? That the reason Texas is one of the most solidly right solidly red states in the country is because this has been happening in Texas for a long time. This is not like it's being done to a greater extreme nowadays, but it's been going on. Like Texas has had the worst voter suppression laws in the country for most of the time that Texas has been in the country. I think that when he says that the system is broken, I just want to say so I guess my point with all this is that I think that Americans we get a lot of ideology about how we live in this freest society on the planet, and that we have this democracy, and it is true that Americans have enjoyed more freedoms than a lot of other nations. I think that a lot of that has more to do with the material benefits we've had of living in sort of the capitalist center of the earth, right? But I think that we've never really our country was founded by a very small minority of white property owners who built a government that would work for white property owners. And while that has been extended through a lot of mass movements and a lot of actions over the years, the civil rights movement, women's suffrage movement, the Civil War to end slavery, there have been a whole lot of movements that have extended who was included in voting and those other types of mechanisms. But our system largely still works to benefit this very small percentage of property owners at the very top, while the things that we want to happen, healthcare for all, abortion rights, all these things that enjoy pretty popular support when you poll on the issues, whether people consider themselves, Democrat, Republican, Independent, or otherwise, those things enjoy mass popular support, but they never get instituted, right? And instead we get, huge ICE budgets. We get $1 trillion a year military. We get an increase in police funding after, it was what, 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, that we had the largest mass protest movement in the country's history over the George Floyd killing, right? So I think, like, if you think that the system, think of it that way, it's like the system is working. It's working for the people that it's supposed to work for, and it's not working for us. And the reason I say that is because I think when you look at the system as broken, I think what people see is that, if we could just rein in this corrupt Trump administration, everything would be fine. But I think this corrupt Trump administration is a result of generations and decades of people making very minimal reforms to a system that kind of is rotten at its core, when we need to make really deeper structural changes to ensure that, like, that regular working people actually have a voice, that actually have power.
Yeah.
Their vote means something, that it's not just like casting it for a leader who makes big promises and can never deliver, and always has an excuse as to why they can't deliver. And I think, like, in our system, that's kind of the role the Democrats take on. It's like they're definitely better than Republicans in a lot of ways, right? Like they're not outwardly openly calling for violence, but take immigration, for instance. I mean, Obama was once called the deporter in chief. Joe Biden deported a ton of people, right? Like they maintained ICE. ICE was created by George Bush, and it was a fledgling organization, and Obama and Biden grew ICE and maintained it, and now Trump is using it in this really fascistic way. So I think
really weaponized it.
Yeah, and I think that, people look at, because I've always been kind of on the more radical end of the left, and people call me, like, when we're out there saying abolish ICE, people say, we're this radical organization that's asking for too much. But it seems to me that anytime you have even just a seed of hatred in your society that's allowed to fester and grow, that eventually it grows out of hand, right? And, like, we keep seeing these outbreaks. I mean, the 1960s, the country was in chaos, and now, again, we're seeing our country in chaos. And, like, before that, the Great Depression. It's like we have these crises every 20, 30 years, these major outbreaks of violence and unrest, and then we put these minimum reforms on it, and we get things back to, quote unquote normal, and then we don't kind of fix those underlying problems. And then
don't you think there's a whole lot of, okay, I'm the white guy now the shit's starting to affect me.
Yeah.
So now there's like, before it was just, the inner city, or it was some,
let's go
immigrants,
back to the 50s.
But now shit's starting to affect me. So now I'm hot and bothered. Now I'm going to go out and protest, or I'm going to, there's an element of that's was, a group of people that felt untouchable, or felt like, that's what puts off, I think, people that have been victimized by the wealthy for so long, is that they feel like, well, where were you back in 1975 or something? Or where were you when I was losing my home to this fucking...
I was in kindergarten.
I was 9.
It was leveling,
This is actually something that I really, wanted to get into today. I guess I can kind of start. So there, a lot of decolonization experts will say that what fascism actually is it's what's called the imperial boomerang. So if you're out colonizing a lot of other nations, if you're out extracting resources from poor nations, and you're toppling regimes and developing military tactics to have urban guerrilla wars against populations that are fighting back, your military, your leaders are learning all this knowledge about how to control people with force. And then when your ideology breaks down, as it kind of has in America, I think, like, most people don't really believe in the American dream, and they don't believe in this image of meritocracy that used to be a stronger belief. And people start sort of, having protests and civil unrest and these things that start happening, like what happened in 2020. Then increasingly leaders just turn to force, right? And they've picked up all this knowledge overseas about how to control people. So what decolonization experts will say is that, like, fascism is what, when the violence that you have always projected outwards turns inwards, right? And that's what you're saying, Phil, like when it's all of a sudden it's these people who have been comfortably in the middle class. I mean, what we would say is the middle class is kind of an illusion. It's like the lower class.
It is now.
The middle class is like an inch here, and then but that class is actually about your do you have to earn a wage for a living, or do you own property that allows you to accumulate more money? And by property, I don't mean like you own your home. I mean like you own a water treatment plant or oil
property that earns you income.
Yeah, and so he'd say that the middle class is like those people are still a part of the working class. They are much closer. They're a few paychecks away from being homeless. They're never a few paychecks away from being a billionaire, right? Like
Right.
Exactly, and I don't consider that. I consider that upper poor, not middle class.
So what I would say is that like when that violence turns inward, because what ends up happening is that these guys, like Elon Musk has so much money, it's ridiculous. I mean, that's hoarding wealth. It's not money is meant to distribute in an economy. That's how an economy functions well. When people start hoarding the money, then it can't distribute and it doesn't get used. And so
he's the richest man in the world and has the least amount of empathy next to Trump, perhaps.
And when these guys just keep on wanting to take and take and take, they eventually capitalism is a system that needs to keep growing. Yeah. When it can't grow any further, they've already, America controls 75% of the world's resources through. I mean, America and Western Europe, but the imperial center of the earth, right? The Western Europe, America, Israel, Japan.
As they go to consolidate,
the money's supposed to flow. That's why it's called currency.
Yeah, and so when they control all that wealth, despite only being 15% of the world's population, then it's like what ends up happening is that when it starts to stagnate, when it's not growing anymore, these guys want to keep taking and taking and taking, so they start taking from, people who have traditionally been pretty well off. Okay, well now their 401k plan isn't worth as much now.
Well, if you want to know what 2025 is all about, that's what we're seeing. This is 2025. Yeah. If you haven't read 2025, you're in luck because now you're on page 565.
Project 2025. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I say,
project. You said the number.
That's what 2025.
Yeah, Project 2025. Yeah, it's like you're already living the doctrine now. I mean, the idea is to throw up all of these, all these diversions, call them a hoax, everything that nothing ever sticks to him, to the president. Here's
because
something.
Because he makes everybody else do it.
Here's something that Brian Taylor Cohen, who is a popular podcaster, says about him. And,
Will posted this today.
Yeah. Trump claims he doesn't know anything about Epstein. But on everything else, I'm the president. I know everything about everything before anyone else. What kind of
up until he doesn't?
What kind of convoluted fucking thinking is that? Or what kind of you're just constantly, what do you call it, flooding the zone?
When you have sycophants that just take every word you say as truth.
Right. But they are executing.
Oh, you can't take that serious. You can't take what he says seriously. I'm like, then why would I want to vote for him for president?
Yeah.
I had a conversation with someone. They know who they are.
But okay, so we got we talk about being disaffected, about people within our own country that have been disadvantaged or taken advantage of by Democratic presidents, all kinds of administrations, all kinds of atrocities have been committed by presidents that we hold in high regard by comparison. But when you think about foreign affairs, which is really, Mike, why I wanted to have you on today, is because that's the other side of the world. It's like, 10 or 500 people got killed in an earthquake today. That's terrible. What's for dinner? You're disaffected. Americans tend to be disaffected by it.
I don't think it's just Americans.
But some of the shit that's going on overseas right now are worse than the problems that we're trying to.
Oh yeah.
That we're we're whining and complaining about as Americans, having our rights taken away and having our health care compromised, pale by comparison to some of the shit that's going on.
And we're contributing to it.
So I want to backtrack. Okay, go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
He's
just talking about our bombs being used in Gaza and our bombers being used in Iran.
And I think, and also, and then this is an underreported thing that there are American private contractors who are, American private companies that have military troops who are working these aid sites and helping the IDF kill children. So we are not, our party calls this the U.S.-Israeli genocide. It is both countries doing it. It's happening in Israel, but it's both countries.
Guess what I got before you get on it, Mike? Let me go ahead and play a video for you.
Okay, cool.
4 aid seekers were killed and wounded on Friday
at an aid distribution point run by the controversial Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF.
The Israelis tell us to go and get aid from this place, and then they kill us. Why do they do this? Why?
Israeli forces also targeted more people on Friday, killing more than a dozen people in Gaza City's Al Tufah, a 4-member family wiped out in Al Zaytun, and tents bombed in Al Mawasi. Israeli soldiers have reportedly admitted they've been ordered to deliberately shoot people near food distribution centers in Gaza. The Haaretz newspaper reports some soldiers told it they'd been instructed to shoot them at aid sites run by Israeli forces and US-backed GHF. Israel's largest benefactor, the United States, announced an additional $30 million worth of military assistance for the organization, saying this.
We call on other countries to also support the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and its critical work.
I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well deserved, and you should get it.
Genocide in Gaza, and we say nothing. I am amazed at how this country that stands for liberty and justice for all, this country that has a Statue of Liberty, how this country can see what's happening in Gaza and not call it what it is. These are precious babies that are being slaughtered.
Yeah. It's tragic. You know, I mean, like, I don't, our American media does not cover this event very well. And because of social media algorithms, the way that they sort of shadow ban things. So like if you post things and you write the word genocide, or you write the word Hamas or Israel or all these like code words, they like bury it in the algorithms. But like, because I'm pretty plugged in the movement, I get lots of media from Israel and Gaza on my on my feed, and like and my feed's just been full of pictures of like starving children. It's heartbreaking. And anyways, this is genocidal behavior, and it's it's like, and the way the media covered, like this week, the New York Times released a story earlier this week talking about how Hamas is taking the aid and hiding it from the Palestinians, and then that story later this week was debunked and shown to be completely false. There was no agency that found that, which is not to say that everything that Hamas has ever done has been good, right? But it is to say that like Israel says all these things about people being terrorists and all this other stuff without, and the media just reports it.
They're a propaganda factory.
Yeah, the media reports it without vetting it, and then it comes out later that a lot of those things were not true. And then they also report things like, Palestinians die and Israelis are killed, right? There's just like this hard and soft language. So one of the things that I think is important to look at with that is that, the sort of like the way that this ends up working is that like eventually it grows to this point where it's like what we're entering in Gaza right now is what they call the fifth stage of famine. So it's this over 80% of the population is estimated to be there. It is when you've reached such a state of starvation that like even if you reintroduce food, that like people will have permanent lifelong injuries as a result, and some will die anyways. And then there's also like the aid is there. It's like it's across the border a few miles, and they're just not letting it in. So recently there was like thousands and thousands of pounds of food. I can't remember exactly the amount of thousands of pounds of food, but thousands of pounds of food they let go bad 3 miles from the refugee camps, and then burned all that food instead of distributing it to the population, and it would have fed thousands of children for a whole month. It's like, and
well,
so
this
it's
GHF, this GHF Foundation, to me, it's like indicative. It's something that's relatable. People can see how insidious that is, and how our connection with Israel is through this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is not only corrupt, but potentially a human. And
then this week also Hamas signed on to a ceasefire agreement yet again, and Israel is saying that they didn't agree to the terms. They asked for a couple of amendments, one of which was to allow the UN's aid organizations, instead of letting Israel and America's aid organizations, because they're being gunned down by the soldiers while they're getting the aid, asked that the UN bring in their own aid, that they would, relinquish some of their holds on hostages, things like that Israel's been asking for. They agreed to, and Israel is the one that doesn't want this because, it's not just this is not the only reason, but Netanyahu has been indicted in Israel's own criminal court, and as soon as this violence dies down, he's probably going to have to face up to some of those charges. So he's keeping this going because it allows him to keep setting off parliamentary elections because he can declare martial law. Beyond that, right? That this is like, the ideology that Israel has is called Zionism. It was invented in the mid 1800s. There's an older religious concept to it, but in terms of its political extent, it was invented in that time period. Israel has never declared their own borders. They've never written a constitution. It's an expansionist ideology, and it was instituted by people that were colonizing a region that they were not from, right? And we've seen this time and time again. The U.S. is also a colony with an expansionist manifest destiny ideology. It's something that tends to affect settler colonial societies, and they've been running it as an apartheid state and only giving some people political rights. And as Lisa was saying earlier, right, it's not a matter of religious conflict. It's a matter of any time we have an ethno state, we see this kind of violence break out. It's the Jim Crow South, all these different types of the Holocaust, all these different types of things are a result of having an ethno state where people are not allowed to have political rights. It creates violence in your society, right? And that, this is why we say that the two-state solution is not enough. That we really need is a one-state solution where everybody can have a democratic voice and people can solve their differences without violence. We've seen two-state solutions instituted before, such as like India and Pakistan. Like 1 million people were killed in the creation of that border, which was far more violence than what they were trying to solve within the country that was there before, where they both lived. Right? It's like
the separation. Is that what they call it?
Yeah. And so it's like these kinds of things, and I also wanted to connect this because I think, as you were saying, Phil, about we think that this is far away. I would like to make an argument, and this is something that I wanted to talk about today because I think it's really important. So to me, I think that, like, paradoxically, I think that this is the most important political issue in the world, without a doubt. I think that until we get a mass of people behind supporting the Palestinians in a real and material way, and holding the people that have done this to account in a real way, I think that we're just going to continue to see chaos throughout the world. I mean, this is not exclusive to America. Britain is in its own period of chaos. France, Germany, a lot of nations are a lot of nations are experiencing this. I think anytime you have like a mass, I think anytime you have a mass trauma like this and nobody's doing anything about it, it affects it has ripple effects, and the world is not. We think of it as these individual nations. None of these nations live in a vacuum. They all trade with each other.
Nope.
They all
you can't do that.
They all have different policies that affect each other. They have borders they have to navigate. So all of this stuff is affected. So we think about what Israel's position has been within the world order. Israel is essentially a giant military base that the West can put inside the Middle East that has the most valuable resource on the planet, oil, and it's a place for them to sort of have somebody there is kind of like a bully. So they develop tons of weapons systems in Israel. They also develop border technology, specifically surveillance technology. The U.S. pays for 75% of the entire world's border enforcement, and U.S. weapons companies develop over 90% of the surveillance technology that's used in borders across the world. In Israel, and specifically in the Gaza Strip, that's what it has been used for. A lot of experts have called it an open air prison, right? So, and then we ship that stuff back to the Mexican border, where we use that to oppress refugees trying to cross the American border, right? That's where we get baby jails and all these other things from, right? And I think what people don't realize is, and then the U.S. police and military train with the IDF to learn tactics on how to control people. So, when we think about this big budget that ICE has just gotten, right? Like they're going to use tactics that they've learned from the people currently carrying this out on immigrants, on the, Trump just passed an order. He wants to put homeless people, drug addicts, and so forth in asylums. They're going to use that on those kinds of people too, right? They're going to use it on political dissidents. They're going to use it on all this.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like some of the tactics that you see, they do carry over in other spheres of influence. Like when we talk about this, when we talk about the GHF, the idea of it is to have these outposts for humanitarian aid, but they're all right around combat zones. And so what they're luring,
why not put them elsewhere?
They're luring people and people to come to these areas, and they're actually gunning them down. And they're gunning them down, and they're firing weapons at them. I have one more video about it.
Gazan authorities say more than 100 Palestinians have been killed while trying to access aid. The American nonprofit in charge of the rollout told the Journal that their model is working. We found that the current aid distribution process, including the routes people must take to reach limited supplies, puts people directly in danger.
American companies will distribute the food directly to Palestinian families. They'll do so in safe zone secured by our military.
In this post from May 29th, you can see what appear to be stun grenades used at the distribution site. Videos shared on social media corroborate Abdullah's account. The IDF also released its own video. It said shows armed attackers shooting at people on their way to collect aid. This video captures an unrelated incident that we found matches a scene posted on a local Facebook group earlier that day. It can be geolocated to a spot about 8 kilometers away from the GHF aid site. Reports of violence outside aid sites continue almost daily. That day, the International Committee of the Red Cross confirmed 27 died while going to get aid. GHF told the Journal that they've had no deaths or injuries at their sites.
Well, thank you very much. Coming from you in particular, this is very meaningful. Thank you very much, baby.
Thank you.
We're going to kill them all.
Yeah. It's insidious, but what's it remind you of? It reminds
genocide.
It reminds me of genocide, but it also reminds me of Laura.
That reminds me, it is genocide.
Well, yeah.
But it's the same mentality. If I'm going to go to Home Depot to arrest immigrants, I'm going to entrap people. I'm going to go to where people are most desperate for help, and that's where I'm going to take them. That's where I'm going to take them down. But
I don't know if you guys saw 6 months or a year ago, last week tonight with John Oliver, he did a Gaza Strip episode, and they showed some interviews with some Palestinians living there, and they had to have chicken wire put above where they live because the Israelis that lived above them throw all their garbage down on top of them. And during an interview, a bottle came down, hit the chicken wire, shattered, and cut one of the guys.
Wow.
Who was being interviewed.
And we're complicit in all this because
that's before we were fighting. I mean, that's before this all broke out.
Well, and I would say also it's more than just. I mean, yes, we are complicit, obviously, but I think it's more than the connection that I was trying to draw is that this is intimately affecting us here, and that when we look at the violence that's ramping up here, it's being done in large part because of this avoidance by our leaders of this was started by the Biden administration. I was involved in the pro-Palestine movement since early November of last year of 2023. Right after October 7th stuff happened. And we were going and sitting outside of investment banks and
I remember seeing your feeds on that. I remember seeing that you were involved at that level. But we have there's this company called Safe Reach Solutions, and it's this mysterious new American company held by an evangelical entrepreneur named Johnny Moore.
Figures.
And they're kind of directing, all of the work.
So, but I think we just there was groups of people going to student encampments, people going to our local politicians' houses, and just silence from all these people. And I think Americans have this tendency to believe if we can just look out for politics locally, then we don't have to worry about this stuff in the rest of the world. If we can protect my school board, keep the Nazis off my school board, and my kids can grow up safe, what ends up happening is these capitalists are gobbling up more and more of our resources, more and more of the planet, and they're not going to give them to us willingly. And so, like, when they create this level of unrest, and then they're also doing all this stuff overseas, it's like we're not going to get a progressive power from people who are willing to do this to children overseas, right? Like, we need to gain power for ourselves, and we need to do that by building working class unity, by organizing parallel institutions that can exist outside of government, so that, like, at some point we don't need their institution. Like, at the end of the day, popular will matters, right? And they can't lead without our consent. And I think, like, people need to stop giving their consent. I think to parties, to both. I mean, not, to any politician that is still not divested from Israel and is still not called for the end of weapons there. I mean, I think that's like just a basic bottom line. I don't think we can expect to get progress otherwise. Now, I don't want that to sound too doom and gloom. I think that, like, a lot of the reason that makes people fearful is because they've been taught, like, well, this is how you make change within our system. But every time that we've seen a mass movement rise up that's really been able to achieve some lofty goals, like, you think, like, the civil rights movement in the 1960s, right? It was on the back of a very chaotic period of time, and then people got organized and people worked together, and they made demands, and they made clear demands, and they told their leaders, we're not going to ride your buses, we're going to sit inside your offices, and we're not going to go away unless you carry us out in handcuffs. All these things, like, help create the power to make those radical and major changes. And by the time that happens, it's like almost always nobody ever wants to go back to doing it the way that they did it before. It's a lot of the reason people have a problem with it now.
They're also funding more cops and more places to put people in prison.
Right. Exactly.
But I mean, but we need to be brave. I mean, I think that I just kind of feel like I'm just going to do the right thing. I can lay my head on my pillow at night. I'm also in a position to do that. Not everybody is. I don't expect that. Everybody has a place in the movement, whether they can, and everybody gets
be
to
brave,
decide
but be careful.
Yeah, everybody gets to decide what level of risk they're going to take on. But I mean, I think, when you're fighting for changes that people need, we do need to take some risks because, we see what the end result is if we don't. I mean, like, what is happening overseas, they can do to us here too, and they've shown that
Exactly. Get turned right on.
Exactly.
Now-
That's why we need to speak up.
So we got an hour.
Speak out
We
and
got-
show up.
We got 10 minutes left.
Okay.
And when you do a political show right now, especially when you're opposed to the regime, I think you've got to throw some red meat at people. And so we do what we call our Elite Eight. It's our Elite Eight mini bracket. And some of this stuff, by comparison to what we're talking about, may not be doesn't have the gravitas maybe. But nevertheless, we're going to look at the last couple weeks. If you're open to this, Mike.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a comparison game.
Let me drop one Trump quote on Gaza from yesterday when he was, I guess, departing Scotland.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hamas didn't really want to make a deal. I think they want to die. They're going to have to finish the job. They're going to have to fight, and they're going to have to clean it up. You're going to have to get rid of it.
There you go. The man himself.
And if I just add real quick to that, because I think if you, I don't have an exact quote on me, but I would encourage people to go look up the types of excuses the people that founded our country made about why it was okay for them to take land from indigenous people as they were creating this country. And I think you will find a lot of them saying very similar things to what that Trump quote said. So I would encourage you to just look at that history and really read between the lines, because I think that's an ideology that has permeated our society and it has been here the entire time we've been here. And I think that's as a result of us being a colony that still has not fully decolonized. So
it just occurred to me. Trump was born like 3 centuries too late.
Yeah.
Well, that's why
he should have been like a medieval king.
Exactly.
The Crusades.
Exactly, Aaron. I've heard that analogy a couple times, but it's spot on.
I hadn't heard it. It just kind of popped in my head like, well, 300 years ago, he'd have been the fucking guy, and there's nothing he could do about it.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Pam Bondi announced there was an Epstein client list, then had to eat her words. That's one fuck up. Versus Tulsi Gabbard, trying to prosecute Obama, but finding out she can't due to the Supreme Court decision that gives presidential immunity. Which is the bigger fuck up?
I'd say that's a bigger fuck up.
Think the second. Okay, Aaron, that's one for you.
Because You should fucking know better.
Yeah, I mean, they fought
You
fought
should have
long and
thought
hard
about it.
and
Yeah.
dropped a lot of money on somebody and influence.
Well,
to get that
that's
done.
right up there with a third term. If Trump gets a third term or gets rid of the
That would require a constitutional amendment.
right, I understand that. But if it happens, because they're trying to get a constitutional Congress so that they can adjust the amendments.
Yeah, they're working on it.
So they've got 3 years, and they've been
But
pretty active.
don't they need to state by state ratify the amendments?
Yeah, and he's gerrymandering every state.
It's
gerrymandering won't matter for a yes or no for
all right,
an amendment.
we're squirreling here.
But
Aaron's got to get Tulsi Gabbard.
You
Mike,
know
what do you think?
Nothing is impossible.
What was the first option again?
What was the first one again?
Pam Bondi announced the
Oh,
Epstein list. She had the Epstein list, and then
She
later
had it, then didn't have it, and now it's there.
That's what all the bro podcasters are pissed off
So
about.
I'm just gonna so we can comment on it real briefly. I'm gonna say the Pam Bondi thing because I think, one, I'm not really sure. I'm not sure whether they had a list or they were just trying to appeal to the conspiracy theory base. They obviously have a lot of information we don't have, but I think that this is another thing that's indicative of just the utter callousness of our leaders, right? Like we have one. The two biggest scandals in the world right now are a genocide that's mostly being carried out on children, and a child sex trafficking ring that they're trying to cover up. And our leaders are engaged in both. So I think that's like a sort of central feature of our society. It's one of the main reasons we need a new system. So yeah, I'm gonna go Pam Bondi.
Okay, we're good.
Some big brother double speak.
I don't know. Mike's kind of talked me over a little bit, but I still feel that
They're both colossal fuck ups and easily avoidable.
Right. But I still feel like the bigger actual fuck up part because Trump's involved. So I'm going to go with Tulsi Gabbard because it's a Trump fuck up.
He's involved in
as
both.
opposed to although all of them are, I feel like he directs everything that these idiots do. And then when they do it, he's like, oh, I don't know that. That's not on me. That's on her.
All right, I'm going with Gabbard also. So it's 3-1. Gabbard moves on as a shitbag. So Trump speculated on who appointed Federal Reserve Treasurer Jerome Powell, forgetting that he had actually appointed him himself. He was about ready to unload on Powell because he didn't lower interest rates.
Thought he was a Biden appointee.
Yeah. Turns out he voted for him. So that's versus Trump again, denying knowledge of the Epstein files, even though he was told by Bondi, the DOJ, that he was in them.
In May of 2025.
So I'll go first on this one.
Yeah.
I'll go with I just like the one with Powell. So I'm gonna go with Powell.
Yeah.
Because he does shit so much. He does so much shit he can't remember all the shit that he does.
And I'm gonna throw in my vote right now for Powell. Simply, partly because I think it is a bigger thing. They're both bad, but Trump just flat out lying about Epstein is something he's probably been doing forever.
Never mind lying about Epstein. He's trying to control the world financial market.
Right. Yeah. But with Powell, that is my maiden name. So
yeah,
Mike.
Yeah, I'll go the other direction again because I think just what I would say about that that the Epstein file stuff. I think so to me this is like a perfect example of I think that this whole scandal is sticking a little bit more than some of his earlier scandals, and I think one of the reasons it is because he tried to manipulate the conspiracy base by using a conspiracy that he knew he was a part of, right? That's like an actual conspiracy. And so I think there's something, I think that if this were the thing if this were the thing that finally fractures his coalition and brings him down, I think there's something of a sort of poetic justice there.
I gotta agree.
That makes it totally self-inflicted in a way that some of these other
So we got a tie then. If Aaron agrees, we got a tie, unfortunately. So okay.
So
We got what are they again? Pam Bondi's. No, it's the first one.
No.
This is Trump versus Trump.
Is
That's right.
Trump speculated. He wanted to know
Jerome Powell versus what?
He lies. He's basically lying about Epstein across the board. Or he's aware that he's on the list.
I like the extended Jerome Powell bit when he was trying to publicly berate him for being X amount over budget.
Yes.
He said, no, we shouldn't be that far over budget. And he took a look and said that, that building
was added an extra building.
That building was completed X years ago.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But we're tied, so we got Powell versus Epstein files.
I'll go
tiebreaker.
I'll go Powell just to avoid a tie.
Okay.
All right.
He just doesn't want to do rock, paper, scissors.
I don't know how to do it right now.
That's how we do. That's how we break our ties. We do rock, paper, scissors.
Okay, so we had these the Nelk boys, some broadcasters, and they had Netanyahu on, and they were yucking it up with him, and basically their whole fan base revolted against them because they were siding up with a dictator, and then that's Netanyahu on the Nelk boys versus Trump admitting he was a sexual predator when he was on the Howard Stern show more than 2 decades ago, probably.
I would go Netanyahu. I think Netanyahu's been indicted in the International Court of Justice. Of course, that court doesn't have an enforcement mechanism, but he can't land in numerous countries on this planet without being immediately arrested. And I think that all these people that are cozying up to him now, this will eventually end, as all these genocidal movements do. There will be something like a Nuremberg trials for them. These people many of them will go to prison the rest of their lives. Lots
it's
of
so ironic that it's Israel,
Yeah, and I think it is. I think that there's definitely a sort of horrific irony there. But I think that these people will all eventually. I mean, I think you've seen things like Amy Klobuchar tweeted something this week about the horror of starvation, but she took a photo op with Netanyahu 2 weeks ago. These people can feel the pressure now. They can feel it sort of burning. And I think all these people are going to be held to account eventually. And I think anybody who was seen as cozying up to Netanyahu is going to have something to answer for in some not so distant future.
I agree. I'm going to go with the Nelk boys too.
Yeah.
I know nothing about that podcast or the Netanyahu being on its story, really. So I'm going to go with Trump saying as long as they're not 12.
Okay, please.
I'm gonna. To be fair, where was he? Oh, he was in New York. Yeah. I'm gonna go with Netanyahu. Yeah.
Okay, so that's
okay, because I'm sorry, but I already knew Trump was a sexual predator and probably a pedophile. So.
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons why I didn't vote for it.
Here you have him saying it on the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recording back.
No one saw that recording before he got elected?
Well, here we go. Ohio MAGA U.S. Senate candidate Josh Mandel shows a campaign ad with himself with other Marines. But on closer inspection, his hands are that of an African-American Marine. So he was obviously photoshopped. Versus, that's a mouthful, Stephen Miller going on record during the Iraq War at the age of 17, endorsing torture as a means of treating prisoners of the Iraq War.
Fucking Gollum.
Yeah. I'll go Stephen. I mean, I think Stephen Miller is. There's few people that make me recoil as much when I see an interview.
No kidding.
Like Nosferatu, right?
Yeah,
he's totally Nosferatu.
And you read interviews with people who have known him closely, and it's just like everybody who's ever met him could not wait to get out of his presence, right?
Yeah.
He's just a really sick person who is, I think, far too gone at this point to if he were to somehow make a about face, like he'd have to be held to account for what he's done so far. But like, I don't think that's happening. But yeah,
It's not
he's
in
got
him.
something wrong with him. Yeah. He's a
he
bad guy.
had like high school paper writings about doing away with Spanish and all kinds of this weird little racist rant.
So you're going Stephen Miller too, Aaron?
Yeah, let's get Stephen Miller on the bracket.
Okay.
Yeah, he's evil.
That's going to be a sweep.
First sweep.
So now we go into Final Four. We got Tulsi Gabbard wanting to prosecute Obama but not being able to versus
That's the
Powell.
funniest fuck up, I think.
Yeah.
That was one of the best ones.
Powell. These are the two funny ones. Matching
Jerome
up.
Powell versus Tulsi Gabbard.
I got to go for the immunity. That one's just, it's too delicious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike? So you're...
yeah, I can go with that as well. I'll go with that.
Okay, so we'll go... That'll be a full sweep then. That'll be 2 sweeps in a row.
That's good irony on that one.
It is.
Then the Nelk Boys with, yucking it up with Netanyahu versus Nosferatu. Stephen Miller.
Oh, that makes me think.
I'm gonna go Netanyahu because I really do think that's like the biggest miscalculation. Not just this one podcast, but I think just in general. I think a lot of people who have spent a lot of time defending Israel's actions are going to have to answer for it eventually. I think like once we know all the information about how many, like they keep saying it's 60,000 deaths, but we know it's much more than that. There are studies that estimate it as high as a couple 100,000 already, and there's 500,000 people that are at risk of starvation at least right now. And so I think that's
indicative of a larger problem, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's going to end up eventually being the biggest fuck up. I think these people are miscalculating how much power they have, and I think eventually when the tide turns on this, a lot of people are going to have to pay the price for their actions in upholding it. So yeah.
All right.
I'm gonna go Stephen Miller because he's an actual more political figure, and the other people are just podcasters.
Yeah,
they're not legislators or government officials or anything like that.
For sure.
I'm going to say the involvement of Netanyahu. I'm going to have to go Netanyahu.
Put me on the spot.
Yeah. Nosferatu. I mean,
well, it's going to be a tie or not a tie. I mean,
right.
I think it's worth.
Do you want a tiebreaker?
I think it's worth going because Miller. We got to get him on the scoreboard because he's such a he's such an evil.
So is Netanyahu.
So's Netanyahu.
That is true.
Can we make it a tie?
Well, then you can't. Then who goes to the next bracket?
Both of them against Tulsi Gabbard.
Okay. Well,
so we guess we know who
seems
won.
unfair.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Netanyahu just because of his importance. Stephen Miller is going to prison probably within 5 or 6 years.
One hopes.
Netanyahu does bigger world figures. So I'm going to go Netanyahu.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty.
You might be going to prison sooner though. Now I think about it. But, so finally, here we got the final.
Might be dead. He'll be blown up.
Tulsi Gabbard, frustrated that she can't prosecute President Obama, versus Netanyahu going on the broadcast.
Didn't we just do this one?
No.
This is the.
Yeah. I'm going to go Netanyahu again.
Okay.
Aaron?
I'll throw one to Netanyahu this time.
Phil?
God, I don't want to tie. but I'm going to go with Gabbard because I feel like I was so pissed off when Trump got presidential immunity that I'm glad that they're finding it cumbersome now. I'm glad that they're fucking.
It is a hilarious fuck up.
Yeah.
In the spirit of the word fuck up. It's
I mean, internationally speaking, Netanyahu. Okay. But America speaking, Gabbard. And I want to say that I feel like this is more of a Trump fuck up because Trump wanted the prosecutorial.
Sure.
You know.
So
So now he can't get his he
Yeah.
can't get his base riled up to prosecute Obama or prosecute Biden.
Right.
So now you and
And
Aaron.
then I don't even think his base believes that bullshit.
I think you and Aaron have to do a rock paper scissors.
Oh.
Because it's tied.
All right.
Okay. How about Aaron? Do you want to, or Mike? Do you want to do a rock paper scissors tiebreaker?
I'll let Aaron go.
All right. So
Ready?
there you go. Make sure your hands in the camera.
1, 2, 3.
I knew paper was coming.
So,
Sorry.
So
I
Netanyahu it is.
Yeah, I did want to just say real quick before we.
No, she won. She won.
Yeah, I won Gabbard.
I did want to say real quick before we wrap up, because I was making this point a little bit earlier. I'm not sure I got all of it out, and I just wanted to kind of say,
Okay.
you know, we've
Absolutely.
talked about a lot of hard stuff on this show, and I think like when you look at the news these days, it can be really doom and gloom. And I want to say one of the reasons that I like organizing. So like today, I did like a disability study group with some of my comrades, and we met with people in just the regular public, and we talked about
I'm interested.
what kind of accommodations and accessibility people would need to survive in a future society where we actually tried to include everyone. And I think what you find is that most people don't want this. Most people have better ideas than what our leaders currently have, and I think that we practice in the party I organize with. We practice what's called revolutionary optimism, which says we acknowledge that things are pretty bad. We acknowledge that the systems as they exist right now are not currently in place to make it a whole lot better in the near-term future, but that if we continue to do the work and we get out there and we talk to people and we organize them and we make better demands and we learn how better to fight power, that we can have a better system and that we can have the things that all people deserve. And I do believe that what we're witnessing, and I think of a minority of people who are used to living a certain way and are kind of seeing everybody is learning something different and the world is changing and they're feeling left behind and they're lashing out. But I think that eventually common sense will win out. I think it's going to take a fight. It's going to take a lot of chaos before we get there. I think like even in your personal life, if you ever had to make a hard change, right? Like you ever gone on a diet or quit a bad habit or anything like that, before you get to that place where things are better, things are awfully much worse for some period of time, right? So I think I think that's just kind of what America's going through. And I think that like in the long run, I think that people are going to be okay. And I think that we need to just keep fighting the good fight and putting one foot in front of the other and being brave and trying to defend whoever we can. And I think that we will eventually be okay. So I wanted to just kind of put out a message of hope at the end, since we talked about a lot of
I agree, and I had to hear that.
Yeah.
Judgment Day and Other White Lies is Mike's book. We're going to go ahead and close out the episode, and hopefully it'll let us do this again sometime.
Yeah.